Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our SCORE event on entrepreneurs. Got an interesting show for you tonight because we've got a guest, Alex Benyo from Brilex Companies. And I grew up in the Youngstown area. And so I've always been kind of fond of watching where Alex and his brother have taken the company and what they're doing. And it's actually be a very interesting discussion tonight. But before we get started, I want to show you a video about Brilex, and it'll kind of plant the seeds for tonight's presentation and discussion. So, Patrick.
What do you look for in a manufacturing partner? Where do you find trustworthy, quality-conscious team members that have your very best interest in mind? At Brelex Industries, we build our culture and operation on those ideals. We deliver products that exceed your expectations in workmanship, value, and on-time delivery. As one of North America's leading manufacturers of industrial equipment, we thrive on strategic growth, investment, and the development of our team. Our capabilities are centered around job shop and contract manufacturing. We specialize in plate and structural fabrication, machining, assembly, testing, and equipment remanufacturing. Brilex Industries was founded in 1996 by brothers Brian and Alex Benyo. They began with only 3 employees in a 5,000 square foot building. In 2 short years, another 55,000 square feet had to be added to accommodate customer demands. Over the next 9 years, opportunities presented by solid customer relationships pushed them to expand the business yet again with 3 building additions. This cycle of growth repeated itself in a big way with the acquisition of the Andrews Avenues facility. Today, Brilex features 2 diverse facilities with over 300,000 square feet of manufacturing space and crane capacity exceeding 100 tons. Our team of talented individuals takes pride in everything they do, from small individual components to complete functioning assemblies. Brilex Industries has become a leading supplier to OEM engineering firms as well as end users. Our top 5 customers are leaders in their industries. Some of these market segments include power generation and distribution, electrical grid infrastructure, oil and gas, metals, rubber, glass, wood product manufacturing, and niche industrial markets. What sets us apart is our commitment to understanding each customer's unique needs. We've made significant investments in our staff and a custom estimating system that allows us to create detailed estimates that accommodate every customer requirement. Our proactive planning strategy includes a cross-functional team of scheduling, project management, plant operations, and quality control.
Each of our projects has a detailed schedule that is updated daily by our production planning specialist. Having our planning and scheduling functions separated from plant operations ensures that our customers' needs are always met.
The project management team at Brilex consists of highly motivated and experienced individuals with backgrounds in fabrication, machining, and engineering. Our project managers are with you from start to finish, overseeing the project from concept to installation. Our business software allows us to place projects in job packet work orders with bar-coded routing. This allows for real-time tracking and consistent flow of information to manufacturing.
Our project managers oversee all aspects of the project. They prioritize tasks, efficiently schedule manpower, order materials, forecast upcoming workloads, and anticipate potential scheduling issues. All of this really with 2 main goals in mind: to avoid conflicts in daily workflow and to bring the project to successful completion.
Next, let's look closer at the manufacturing process. A manufacturing project may begin with our extensive inventory of raw material. Our current plate processing capabilities include CNC oxy-fuel table that can cut up to 12 inches thick and multi-torch high-definition plasma table that can process plate up to 3 inches thick. In-house weld inspections are daily events for our certified welding inspector. Our welding program includes manual MIG, TIG, flux core, sub-arc welding, as well as robotic welding, and is ASME U-Stamp accredited. Our facilities contain a large capacity thermal stress relieving furnace, shot blasting booths, and several painting booths. State-of-the-art tooling allows us to machine a vast range of materials. Our skilled technicians use state-of-the-art 3D modeling and offline programming to assure optimal results and are trained to maximize the potential of every machine. Brilex can machine the most complex parts with critical tolerances adjusted to the tightest specifications. From smaller vertical and horizontal milling needs to 5-face gantry mills and large CNC floor mills, we cover all sizes. We also offer hydrostatic pressure testing up to 10,000 PSI. When complete assembly is required, we have the ability to meet your needs, from close tolerance mechanical fits to piping, lubrication systems, and electrical controls and devices. After final completion of the project, we handle the logistics so that you don't have to and ensure your on-time delivery. At Brilex, quality control is not just a final operation, it's embedded into each step of our manufacturing process.
Here at Brilex, we have a very well-trained and meticulous quality department using industry's most up-to-date measurement devices that allow us to meet internal expectations and exceed our customers' expectations.
We are also committed to the safety of our employees and guests. Our dedicated full-time safety officer ensures that all employees are properly trained to avoid hazardous situations and preserve personal wellness. It's not just our process that sets us apart, it's our people who are truly our biggest asset.
From the shop floor to the front office, we have an incredible team, talented people who work hard with customer satisfaction as their top priority.
Our employees are hired not just for their aptitude, but also for their attitude. We emphasize training and mentoring through all stages of an employee's career. So where do you find trustworthy, quality-conscious team members that have your best interest in mind? Here at Brilex. We are staffed to deliver not only quality products, but also superior customer support.
So that was a fantastic video and a great start for us tonight.
Thank
you. I'm going to share a story with you on what I told my daughter early on in her career. And it brings me, one of the things that you're doing, many of the things you're doing at Brilex brings me back to this. And I think it's really the crux of good business. And so I told my daughter, I said, Carly, you're going to come across many people who you're going to say, don't do a good enough job. And I want you, when you run across those people, to say, what did I do to cause them not to do a good job? Did I not give them the proper training? Did I not give them the proper leadership? Did I not give them the proper guidance? Did I not spend enough time with them and get them in position to be successful? Because I think, Alex, nobody wants to go home at night and say, or come in the morning and say, I can't wait to jam up that copy machine. I can't wait to screw up these parts so I can fix them all the rest of the week. Nobody does that. I think everybody, human nature, everybody decides, hey, I'm going to try to do my best today. And I'd like to sit just like you and I do sometimes in the evening, put our feet up on the ottoman and say, I did everything I could today to do a great job and to be successful and help my company move forward. And I think that getting back to your video here shows the amount of involvement you have with the employees. And to me, that's the cornerstone of a successful business. Your comments.
You're exactly right. A lot of that has to do with the culture. What culture are you going to build? Do these people work for you or do they work with you? And are you on the same team trying to satisfy the customer's need, trying to compete with a competitor that might have a lower price or more capabilities than you?
Mhm.
And you need to be able to build that philosophy that I'm here to give all that I can do. And as a business owner and as a manager or as a leader, it's your obligation to provide that training, the support, and to support that culture.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's not something, as most of you know from me talking here before, I do a lot of business turnaround work. And that's the biggest problem in turning around a business is, do you believe in yourself? There was a note a friend of mine sent, and I'll send it to you tomorrow. But a friend of mine talked about Barry Zeckelman's note about the election. And he said, listen, we may have President Biden, we may have President Trump. Lord knows where it's going to end up. However, keep in mind that our business is our business, and we're the ones that got it here. We're the ones that drove it to success. And so I think you've got to keep that, when you start to change culture in a business, you got to think about what drove you to that success in the first place. I want to come back to, since this is more on an entrepreneurial bend here, how'd you and your brother think of this and start this?
Well, that's, yeah. Early on, well, our father was a welder, and early on in his career, he and one of his managers decided to go start a fabricating company. And they started that on the side, working in the evenings.
And was that in Youngstown or was that
Yes,
somewhere else?
that was
Okay.
Northeast Fabricators.
Okay.
Okay. So they started that, and my brother and I were very, very young, and my father quit his other job and became dedicated to working at Northeast Fabricators with his partner. And they had taken on a silent partner shortly after that to help the business grow. And well, as time went on then, so we grew up, in the mentality of working for a company that you own and leading people.
Mm-hmm.
So then when we graduated from university, Brian went to Ohio State. He then went to work for US Steel, and he's 2 years older than me. So when I graduated and I took a job in Chicago, Brian.
Where'd you go to school, by the way?
John Carroll University.
Okay.
So then Brian, at the same time that I was leaving, Brian came back to work in my father's company. And they then asked me to come back 2 years later. So I came back to there with the goal of buying out my father's partner, which was the intent.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't pan out real well. The business, we got the business growing more than it had before. And he decided it was nice being a silent partner and don't really want to sell. So we kind of were forced to go out on our own. And that's when Brian and I went to start Brilex Industries in 1996.
So how much thought went into that? I mean, you obviously know the marketplace is out there, you're successful, but how much intrepidation do you have when you go out and say, I'm going to make that big move? Because it's risky.
We were really young, so we were probably pretty dumb at the time.
That happens.
Yeah. I mean, you see risk a little differently at that time. I believe it was a lot easier for us then because we really didn't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't have anything, you don't have a lot to lose,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a lot to gain. We were very confident in our abilities. My brother is extremely knowledgeable on all aspects of business, but very, very strong on the manufacturing side. And I was quite sure that I could handle the financial side and the sales. So we had all the confidence.
That was your background, financial or more sales?
Well, my business degree is in marketing and logistics.
Okay.
But John Carroll's business degree was very well rounded in all aspects.
Right.
So I understood finance and accounting side very well.
Yeah. Take us through, you guys made a pretty interesting acquisition with Taylor Winfield. And a little story about that. I used to work on the west side of Warren, and Taylor Winfield was there. And we used to go to this restaurant called the Golden Gate, Cesta's Golden Gate on the west side. And Bob Thomas was the purchasing agent at Taylor Winfield. And Taylor Winfield was on maybe Mahoning Avenue, I think.
Yes.
And Bob Thomas had a regular seat at the table, as well did the guy that was at Copperweld and the guy that was at Peerless with me. And a whole bunch of them had their own regular tables there because they went out to lunch every day with suppliers and that kind of stuff, which is, foreign for everybody today. It doesn't happen that way, but that's the way it happened, back pre-1985. And so you kind of made that acquisition. But when you look at your business today, I see some things that pretty significant from what Brilex does, pretty significant equipment list. But Taylor Winfield doesn't exactly follow that. And that's not that's not heavy industry the way I think of it. How'd you come across the acquisition and how'd you pull it all together?
Well, one thing that I found in life, that pretty much everything goes back to relationships. And Taylor Winfield actually was our first customer. They wrote us our first purchase order.
Well, no kidding.
It wasn't Mr. Thomas. He was retired by then. It was Dan Baker at the time.
Yeah.
And so we were building the vast majority of the fabrications for Taylor Winfield. Another very good business relationship of ours is a machine shop up in Cleveland, Standard Machine, Jimmy Dopolis. And he would do the machining, and then Taylor Winfield would do the assembly. With Taylor Winfield, the big difference between Brilex and Taylor Winfield is Brilex is a contract manufacturer. So somebody else comes to us with their prints or their needs, and we manufacture to their specifications.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor Winfield is a products company. They have resistance welders, industrial welding equipment.
And a pretty great name in the industry, in that particular industry.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of automation equipment. So they have, in that type of a company, they're doing the design of the products that are their products. And then they'll come to a Brilex to buy a fabrication. Now we also do the machining.
Did it ever cross your mind when you did that this is, foreign to us because it's not exactly what we grew up with?
People don't see these things.
I mean, I remember being at Cummins, and we took an old muffler plant and turned it into an integrated assembly filter plant for 2007 compliant engines. And what they forgot to do, getting back to the culture thing that you wisely mentioned there, what they forgot to do was get that to where people understood what the product was and how to do it. And because it's a different game. It's a different game from being an assembly operation and a welding operation. Different game from having really, probably in a lot of cases, higher technology involvement in induction welding as compared to what you're doing in the standard quote unquote Brilex business. Did it ever scare you?
I've found that number one, when you're in business, you typically have an ego. So not too many things will scare you.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of confidence, which you need to have, because you should be scared in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, I've always felt like I'm certainly not the smartest person in this room, especially when you start getting into the details of each aspect, of engineering and of manufacturing. And I had all the confidence in the world that the company had those skill sets. And if you build the right culture and you treat people right and you develop the right business philosophy and systems, that you don't need to be the person that understands that stuff. You just need to make sure that you take care of the people that do, and you keep them engaged and contributing.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because you look at most of the entrepreneurs that are younger folks and entrepreneurs that are on the call tonight. I think it's a matter of, you know, one of my associates said to me is one time, he said, "You're the best delegator I ever ran into." And I thought, you know, paraphrasing you, Alex, I thought for a while, and I said, you know, I can't do this all myself. And if I had to do it all myself, nothing would ever get done. But I know how to use the resources that we have in order to make the whole successful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's tough to turn that off when you come home, though.
Yeah.
Doesn't go
Well,
over so well.
we'll ask your son.
He's okay with it. His mother, it's a little more struggle.
Exactly. So tell us a little bit about, you know, we talk about the Brilex companies. How did you pull this all together, and what's out there, and what went in mentally into creating this? Because I have to say that, you know, and you and I have only met because of your son. And, you know, I have to say that from afar, I've actually admired what you guys have done and pulled together. And I think even though you're probably, I know we all have egos, but you're probably modest enough to say that it's not because you're a genius.
No, certainly not.
And so how did you, these acquisitions that you made, and how did they all fit together? What are you trying to create?
Well, the one core part of it that we try to focus on is feeding the beast, let's say. In the manufacturing world, it's really about producing hours and pumping materials through. The end product just happens to be whatever the end product is. But the way
So it's all about throughput.
It's all about generating profit.
Yeah.
And the more throughput you can get through of hours and materials, and you're making a profit off of each of those, hopefully, the more that you can put through, the better. And our type of an industry, heavy industry in the United States over the last 40 years, I mean, you've seen it's been a constant decline. So we went against all the rules they teach you in business school. We went into a extremely mature business, you know, starting up our own and having to fight our way for market share and
I think that's what's remarkable about it.
Yeah, and you know, it's been a declining market the whole time.
Yeah.
So when we would come across opportunities, whether it be for an acquisition or a you know, some kind of a joint venture type business, which we've done a few of those, the number one core thing that I look for is this going to be a customer to Brilex? And is it going to be able to feed Brilex with demand to replace what might be just falling away in our market? Even though we're continually trying to expand our market with Brilex on its own, these acquisitions can become, you know, internal customers. But one thing you always have to be careful about is that to remain competitive, you always have to base your competitiveness against the open market. You can't become complacent that, well, I've got this captive customer, so if I don't control my cost and everything, I'm just going to pass it on to them anyways. Well, that's what happened to a lot of the larger manufacturers.
Yeah, and that ship's kind of sailed. You can't do that anymore.
You can't do that. So with us, we have the best of both worlds because Brilex has a vast customer base that requires us to stay very competitive in cost and quality, yet we then have our internal customers that we own, which helps push that demand up, you know, and you should pump more through. You can be more stable.
But did you and Brian ever have a vision for what you wanted to create, or was it more happenstance and you maybe not had the vision of what to pull together, but you recognized an opportunity and took advantage of it? How did that work for you?
Yeah, we strictly recognize opportunities. You know, in 20-something years, we've never had a legitimate board meeting. We've never had a capital plan. It's sometimes we'll meet and say, you know what, we need to pull back on capital spending this year. And a week later, Brian will say, hey, I found this machine for $1 million. I think we should buy it.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, that's, ours has always been a very spontaneous, you know, do we have the opportunity to acquire this customer if we make this acquisition, or if we make this investment, and that can change day to day.
So do you consider yourself entrepreneurs?
Oh, yes, very much so. Very much.
And
so.
how would you describe an entrepreneur? What makes you different than your competitors?
I think we're faster at identifying opportunities and
Mhm.
why it is an opportunity and what needs to be done to make it a reality. I get bored very quickly doing the same thing. So once an opportunity is turned into an actuality, I'm looking for the next opportunity because I'm bored working within that ongoing. I can't be a manager.
Mhm.
You know, there's different.
I mean, I
skill
think
sets.
you raised a good point, because I always get the question about what is a manager, what is a leader, how are they differentiated? And so the one thing I always say is a manager controls, a leader inspires. And so sometimes a good leader isn't necessarily a good manager as well, you know,
Very much so.
because you're looking at different opportunities, and you're determining, hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? I mean, I think it's pretty remarkable. You also have a building downtown that was, what was in that building before?
You're talking about Plant 2, the one that was
it
the
may
old
be.
William B. Bullock facility?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, give us the history of that. I mean, because that business had been in, William Pollock has been in business for years, but what were they making in there, and how did that adapt to what you guys do?
Well, William B. Bullock made the ladle transfer cars for moving ladles of steel, and then they also made the ones that looked like a cement mixer almost on a railroad car, where they
Mhm.
pour the hot metal
Mhm.
into that, and then it would go to another part of the steel mill and pour that out. And as blast furnace industry, you know, as steel mills started tearing down their blast furnace and going to the electric arc furnaces, you didn't need the hot metal cars as much.
Mhm.
So that industry started to shrink. And then the ladle transfer cars, they just really couldn't compete in them anymore. They were a top heavy company by that time. And I think it was in the early 90s, I believe, late 80s, early 90s, that their demise came.
Okay.
So then that building had been sold a couple times, you know, but the actual layout of the building is beautiful for heavy manufacturing.
Because I would imagine they have probably 100-ton cranes, if not more,
Yeah,
you know, and probably, 50-foot under crane,
yeah,
that
there's
kind
a
of
lot
stuff.
of hook heights. There's a lot of hook
Yeah.
heights. The bays are wide, and then there's bays that, you know, that are lower bays right alongside of it, but it's all open, which is
Yeah.
columns.
Yeah.
So it's a great manufacturing building, and that's where, you know, we now do our power generation stuff, our oil and gas equipment's done there, and then a lot of our large assemblies are completed there.
Now, you talk about power generation. That's an interesting market to get in. When you identify markets like that, how does it work at Brilex to say, one day you don't say, hey, I'm going to get in the power gen business, or maybe you do, I don't know. But how does that come about? Especially when you got two strong entrepreneurs running this business that maybe have different ideas about what should be done. How does it work?
Well, there's two ways that we find business, and sometimes they're successful, sometimes they're not. But you have your traditional marketing efforts and going out calling on customers and trying to find potential business to bring in. So we have our abilities, you know, our capabilities, and there's different types of customers that have things that fit us, and there's others that don't. Of course, power generation is one that does sort of fit in to what Brilex was prior to us getting into it. But a funny story, you know, back to relationships. There was a purchasing agent that was one of our first customers, and was a customer for probably 15 years. took a transfer within their company to a division that did power generation. And they built a beautiful plant down in Savannah, invested like $400 or $500 million. And the Japanese people said that, hey, we need to find somebody to build these components.
Right.
And he says, I know just the place. And they came up to visit us, and his Japanese leaders said, there's no way in the world these guys are going to build this stuff. I mean, that's when we bought Plant 2. We said, well, if you give us the order, we'll buy this plant, we'll retrofit it. And our long-term contact said they will do it. And
How old
that's
are
we
you?
went into it.
How old are you?
52.
Okay, so a lot younger than me, 11 years younger than me.
Oh, that's all.
But I want to share this because we do a blog, not a blog, a podcast, and I do a blog as well. But, we talked about when we were kids, and Blake, this is good information for you. When we were kids, we didn't have all these fancy video games and all this crap you guys got today. But we had something that was different than you had today. We had these blow up things. It was either a clown or it was some thing, I don't know, sheriff or whatever. And you punched this, it was a balloon with a weight in the bottom, and you punched it. And it came back right up in your face. And you punched it again, and it came back right up in your face. And you punched it again, and it came back right up. Simple as can be. However, such a great lesson for that generation to learn is that when you get punched in the head, you come right back up and take another punch and take another punch. Yeah. And I think, sometimes that teaches you determination that you guys may not have today. And I think that that's pretty significant, the toys we played with as kids and the things we had to do in playing baseball across the street and an empty lot and that kind of stuff actually made us kind of independent.
Right. And
drove some of the behavior that we had.
Remember, our cars used to break down?
Yeah, exactly. And so many times I'm driving down to Columbus to see my son. And it used to be, you used to say, well, I'm driving to Columbus. I saw 4 Hyundais that broke down. But now cars last forever. Yeah. The tires don't even go flat on them. You just see people with flat tires, and it doesn't happen. I mean, things have really changed. I mean, but the only people that can talk about those things are the guys who have lived through it and are still living, I guess. So anyway, what's your biggest break in business? Is there something that happened that because of this thing happening, it cascaded downward?
Well, that's a tough one. That really is. Probably one of the, I can't say we ever really had a break. It's just been just a rolling ball of things that added to it. But one thing that kind of does stick out was we had a supplier as a machine shop down in Southern Ohio, and called me out of the blue. And this was back in 2001, which at the time, there were some rough times there with things that were going on. And he called me and said, hey, he says, Alex, I got this package from this company that wants to buy these circuit breakers. They want me to bid on me. He goes, I can't do this stuff. This doesn't fit me. I think it fits you. So he sent it up to us and had my salesman go call on the purchasing agent and said, hey, we'd like to bid on this. This gentleman said it thought it fit us. And we ended up winning the contract. And it was to make circuit breakers, large circuit breakers.
Wow.
550 kVi, they're $20,000, $30,000 each. And we ended up winning, the contract, and we are still the sole supplier to those. So it's been 20 years. And we're building hundreds of those.
But you think about that, Alex. What actually happened to get that for you? Again, it goes back to relationships.
Yes.
that you built before and they come back and they pay off again. I mean, that's to me, that's the constant through here. So, have you've been successful in developing this business, and you guys obviously have vision. You may not have this all written down on a piece of paper, but how do you, when you look at growing the business, do you look at strategic acquisitions, or what are you trying to do? Do you say, well, here's the gaps we're looking at, and here's what I think we need to acquire next, or doesn't even, it just happens to show up on your doorstep and you look at it then?
Yeah, we're more optimistic. Whenever we did look at strategic, I just can't stomach the pricing.
Yeah, yeah.
It just is out of, we're more of a value opportunistic acquirer. But as far as, growing the business side of it, we try to have a strategic approach as to, well, what markets appear to be growing that have a product that fit what we
Now,
serve.
you guys have run this business for 24 years. Has it been kind of like a sawtooth growth, or has it been steady income and steady increase over those 24 years? Because the market is, the market has fluctuated.
Yeah, I would say it was pretty steady up till about 2008. 2001 had
That
some
was
unique
another
things
downturn.
happen.
Yeah.
2001 had some unique challenges. However, my recollection is we grew through that time frame. 2008 was just a banner year that then fell off a cliff. We had some lucky things happen there. We had a customer when we got into making beer bottle making machines, and we were the sole supplier, and they had a huge demand to replace a bunch of machines. So that really helped. And same time, the facility out in North Jackson was being built, that forging plant, which we had the contract to build the majority of that equipment. So we had two great things happen that really helped us through 2009. Which was the downturn year. But from then to now, to get back to that growth has been difficult, to get back onto that growth train. We recovered, in that. But this year certainly is very challenging. It's going to be a tough year.
Right.
Who knows? I mean, next year looks like things are geared up to be a good year, but who knows?
Well, with the political situation and where we're at, I mean, I think it's a crapshoot with not knowing what's going on with COVID, what we need to do, and that kind of stuff. What's been the biggest frustration over the years for you?
Well, being responsible on the sales and financial side, customer loyalty, the changes in customer loyalty over this 20-something years.
So today people buy on price and bid on price, and nobody gives you credit for the intangibles that you provide.
It's amazing how quick people are to make a decision about a purchase without investigating what's the reputation, what's the history of the company, and what kind of people am I dealing with. Everybody today that can submit an email with a quote on it is considered an equal, and they're not equals. And it's very frustrating when you've seen so many orders that you lose to only find out that the company ended up not delivering on time,
Right.
Poor quality item,
Right.
and the customer goes and does it again with the next lowest bidder.
Right.
And you have to be competitive. You have to be competitive, but there is a cost to provide something. You can't provide, something has an intangible cost to it.
I would agree. And I think what we realize a lot of times is, I'm doing a turnaround in Ashtabula, and one of the things that we've got to recognize is we're doing some 3D printing work, and that comes with a cost because there's an investment in that. You've got to pay off the investment that you have. And so it costs a little more, But I totally agree with you. I think the market has shifted so much to where it's too mechanical now. And so when we talk about, you and I both grew up in the relationship era, and I think it's still of value and still tremendous value. But I agree with you. It's kind of shifted to where what's your number and driving cost out. They think they're driving cost out. They're really not long term.
No.
And so I think, one of the cool things about you grew up in Youngstown, right?
Correct.
So one of the cool things about growing up here is the fact that there's some pretty neat companies around here that are in not necessarily your space from a value add standpoint, but in your space from an equipment standpoint. So when you look at people like Elwood, fantastic company,
Yes.
and have really managed this, have really grown the business to a certain level and are really do some neat things, John Revin's old business at Warren Fab, really some cool technology. Even the small machine shops like Gerard Machine and those things, they had equipment that could do just about anything in this world. And it was interesting in my time in traveling in South Africa, my first trip over there, I said, man, there's a lot of capability here. And I said, where the hell did they get all this, this 36 foot diameter ball or a lathe or a 36 foot a mill, And I said, how the hell did you get all this stuff? And they said, it was you that caused that. And I said, me? They said, no, Americans caused that because during apartheid, you wouldn't sell us anything. So we had to go build it ourselves in order to produce it. So that built an infrastructure here in order to support that kind of growth in that market. Now, it wasn't the latest technology because we have the advantage over that. But it just goes to show you competitiveness in the world and why people are where they're at. I remember then years later going back to, we were looking for large forging equipment. And Korea was a place we were looking at. And it was because Korea had that kind of equipment with Hyundai and Daewoo, and they were all on the coast. But during that time, China took over that market. And because it was a shipbuilding industry. So it's interesting how you look back and you say, well, what you knew yesterday doesn't really apply to today because the markets have all shifted and it's difficult. Was there ever a time you felt like just giving up?
Well, when you say giving up, you mean quit?
Yeah.
No, I never quit. No. Now I've had feelings of walking away,
Yeah.
which I don't consider quitting.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've never been in a situation where I was just tired of the fight and would want to
Does
quit.
the fight excite you?
It does to a point, and then you can get to a point where you're tired of it. But it's funny because when you go into when business is just booming and booming and booming and things are going great, you can get bored. So then it's kind of nice when it slows down a little bit and becomes a challenge to go find work again. But then after about 3-4 months, you had enough of that. But I've never had a challenge in the business that didn't energize me, to fight. But you do get tired, being an entrepreneur, being responsible for all that, having to lead all the people and deal with everything that you have to deal with. I mean, to give you an example, I was out working on the pond a couple of days ago, as you know, and I get a phone call. Actually, it was Sunday, and I get a phone call from the alarm company. Well, I should be the last person on this list to get a phone call for. I'm like, which building is it that you're calling from?
Yeah.
Well, of course, it was the cleaning people that set the alarm off. But it's like, why am I getting this phone call?
Yeah.
You've got how many people? I think I was 6th on the list.
And so nobody answers their phone, so it comes to you.
Yeah, so I get the call.
Yeah.
But,
I see that happen a lot.
Yeah. So I mean, you do get tired.
So you
of
never
carrying that
the business never leaves
responsibility.
you.
It never. It all the time. So you do get to a point where you're tired of that responsibility, and you know, at the end of the day, do you need it? Really comes down to what drives you.
Yeah.
Some people are driven just from the ego of it, and some people feel important about it.
Yeah.
To me, you know, I mean, it was an obligation to the employees, you know, to keep things growing and so that they could do better. But you get to a point where the business pretty much is running itself. And
Yeah, I mean, it's nice if it can do that. What do you think, Alex, about legacy? What would you like to have people say about you? Now, I think about that a lot, but I think about that a lot because I'm 63. I'm older than you. I think about that a lot because I've lived with chronic lymphocytic leukemia for 20 years. So I know life is short. But what would you want to see your legacy be?
I'd want people to say he was a Christian on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, just like he is on Sunday.
Fantastic. You know, I think that's important because that to me is, you know, we did a little podcast on the 7 C words of leadership, and you know, commitment is one, curiosity is one, and I think, you know, when you look at what you do, character is the most important thing. And if you know, when you face business issues and business problems, if you can look your partner, your wife, your people that work for you in the eye and tell them what's going on, and they can actually believe you because of your character, says a lot about an entrepreneur and his business, because it is your baby.
Yeah, how you treat people all the time is, I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yep.
You know, because you all have to succeed together, and people have a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems out there, and you need to be able to help them.
Yep.
You know, you can't be taken advantage of. You have to be able to figure out, you know, where's the line between helping somebody and supporting somebody from not being responsible for their own things that they
So
need to
do
take
you
care of.
believe that part of being a leader is to show compassion as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you don't have compassion, you're fake.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. I think that's very interesting. And I think that's the basis of everything we do and how we take things to the next level. What's Brilex going to look like in 10, 15 years?
I would say that 10 or 15 years ago, I wouldn't tell you it looked like it does today.
Yeah.
But you're going to see more automation. Absolutely. There's going to be more technology coming into our business that doesn't exist as much today. And that technology should help people with lower skill sets be able to achieve the quality that we need to achieve, because there's less and less people coming into our industry, which is a challenge. So we need to obviously train people to be able to come into it, but at the same time, we're going to have to be able to help them with technology and machines that can do more on their own, so that you can replace the skill sets that I don't think education is ever going to be able to feed fast enough. I think you're going to see huge wage increases in the heavy labor or skilled labor areas because of that shortage, which I think is a good thing. As long as our customers are willing to respect that they have to pay for that and not go to places that you know, that
Like Korea, like Japan,
China, sure.
Yeah, China, yeah. Vietnam.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's never a long-term solution. I've seen that cycle. I've seen it from, you know, Eastern Europe, you know, over to Asia, like you said, you know, into Korea and China. It's always only a short window anyway. So why even go down the road?
What do you think about STEM education, and are we doing enough for our younger people?
No, we do not. expose our children at an early enough age to help them understand the different paths that they could go for a career. I'm not an expert in education in that, and I haven't put a tremendous amount of thought into this, but in my mind, we should be looking, third, fourth, fifth grade, these children should be getting exposure to the skilled trades, and that these are career paths. Everything's not college. Okay. And I think that there should be decisions made 7th, 8th grade on which direction you're going to go. No student should come out of school without either a skill that they can go get a job and be further developed, or going to college. Nobody should be coming out of school wondering, what am I going to do?
No, I think that's you preface that by saying you're not an educator, but you are a businessman and you know what's required from a skill-based standpoint. And I just wanted to get your opinion on that, because I think it's very important as we look at how we educate our kids today. Are we doing it the right way? And are we going to be able to provide a good workforce to continue to develop the manufacturing space?
Yeah, and truthfully, Ron, I don't care what business you're in. I hear that finding good people is a problem.
It's everywhere.
I hear that across the world.
Yeah, it's everywhere. So you have done something that I think is pretty remarkable, in the sense that I don't consider you retired. I consider maybe you removed from the business slightly, but you were able to extract yourself from the business at 52 or 50 or 51, which is pretty cool. And that's what every entrepreneur says they want to do. What are the pluses and minuses of that? Because you can't play golf every day. And I don't care about that pond in your backyard. There ain't enough fish in there to really keep you going.
Yeah. You're right that, it's part of the dream that everybody has. My father's father was in his mid to late 50s when he died of a heart attack. So we've always kind of been conscious that we're not the best hearts out there. So so you don't want to run that runway too far. And a lot of people don't realize what you gave up to build your business. Blake's my third child, so I started to come home a little bit when Blake grew up, but I still missed a tremendous amount of that time. The first two, I was never home. So, it's nice now that I can go to all Blake's baseball games. I don't have anywhere else I have to be.
Yeah.
And I don't care when they are or where they're at.
Yeah.
I can now go. But
and now COVID hits and you can't go anyway. So.
But yeah, so, other than our one joint venture, which I do have to work a little bit still because of COVID, because my Italian partner is supposed to be the one running that business right now. And unfortunately, he can't come.
Yeah.
So I've had, a good 3 or 4 hours a week that I have to dedicate to that. But I was looking to maybe pick up, like a board seat, maybe energy company in Ukraine or something. They pay pretty well. So just something. Don't have to know much.
That's a good one. Well, listen, thank you very much for the conversation tonight. Pat, do we want to open it to questions?
Yeah, AJ had a question, right?
AJ has a question.
Who is the talented co-host of this podcast?
Who's what?
Who's the talented co-host you have on your podcast?
AJ, explain that. I'm dense. I don't get it.
Do you have a co-host on your podcast?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know when.
Is it AJ?
AJ Bove is the co-host on my podcast. Sorry for being so dense there.
I do have a question though. So I don't know if this is a question for previously from where you used to be at in the company, but you have multiple buildings then?
Yes.
Okay, so how many buildings do you have separately?
Brelex Industries operates in 3 buildings.
3, okay.
1 in Newton Falls, 2 in Youngstown.
Okay.
Taylor Winfield has a facility in Youngstown.
Okay.
And that's pretty much all the operating companies.
Okay. And how often are you in each of those?
Currently,
Sure. Yeah.
Not very often.
Okay, yeah.
Not very often at all anymore. But when I was working full time within the business, depends on which business I was working in. So when I worked at Brilex, I was in the facilities every day.
Right.
When I was at Taylor Winfield, I was in the Taylor Winfield facility every day,
Okay.
when you're traveling.
Right.
So
So then do you have general managers now in each of those plants
that presidents, vice presidents,
Okay.
it's fully managed.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yes.
So they rarely come to you then anymore for issues or anything along those lines.
Very rarely.
Okay.
There's we have bi-weekly updates.
Mhm.
So we'll have a conference call every couple of weeks just to go over any issues that they might have or questions that they have. And of course they can
Okay.
call if they ever needed anything, but we're very blessed to have great people that really they've got their hands on the business. Brelex Industries are run by a gentleman that's been with us for over 10 years.
Okay.
Taylor Winfield has a lot of senior people in it that has been there a long time. We have a new president that we hired 6 or 8 months ago that's doing a great job. So he has more questions than what Steve would have at Brilex. The other companies are all pretty well staffed and managed with.
And a lot of that would be really focused on empowering your people to make decisions and run the business, because that's what you hired them for. And that's what you pay them for.
Exactly.
And so I guess if you train correctly and empower people correctly and manage it, you should be successful.
Right.
There's a difference of working in your business and working on your business.
Right.
2 different things.
Right.
And luckily I've gotten to the point where I only have to work on my business and only a certain amount.
Right. You're looking at a 30,000 foot view, and then you have your managers looking down at the floor.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And they have their KPIs that they report out to us weekly. So you're seeing what's happening. So we keep an eye on backlog, profitability. If you're seeing any people issues coming up somewhere, it's, hey, what's going on there? We got the culture right.
Right. And how do you see those then?
Those get emailed out to us.
Okay.
Yeah. So we get reports every week from each of the presidents to my brother and I. And there's a couple other people copied on it. The CFO's copied on them. HR's copied on it.
There's like employee reviews.
No, it's a complete report for that week.
Okay.
So any issues that happened in the companies, any problems with any employees would be in there. Their KPIs as far as, how many direct hours were produced, indirect hours.
All the financials.
Yeah, all the financials.
Okay. Yeah.
All that information is reported out to us. And then we have bi-weekly call, with the one president, and we'll go through any of those that he's got concerns with. And then it's pretty much ad hoc after that. If there's a unique situation or an opportunity and they want to have a little meeting, and Brian and I'll come in. So we're always available if needed. And there's certain customer relationships that, you can't just hand off relationships. I can't have a relationship with somebody for 20 years and say, hey, you know what? I'm really not going to be around that much anymore. So Pat's your man, here you go. And that relationship is not the same.
Yeah.
So there's certain relationships that we've built over the years that are very important for Brian and I to still maintain that relationship, even though we'll have a salesman that's involved, plus the other leaders in the company also have a relationship. But you never want to sever that. People like to deal with the owners.
Right.
They think they're special because they get to deal with the owner, and that's great. Fine, So there's some. I'll take a road trip, go see a couple friends, and go golfing with them, or go out to dinner, and then But if they need something, they know to call back to the office.
Yeah. And it's a quicker line back to you to get something done. So, that's good. Pat, any more questions?
Like AJ might.
Yeah, I got another question. Thank you, Ron, for answering the question about the talented co-host for the podcast. Alex, we would love to get you. Alex, we'd love to get you on the podcast at some point. But my question for now is, and it might have already been answered. I joined a little bit late, so forgive me if you're going to repeat yourself. But over the 24 years of doing business with your brother, how have you guys managed disagreements? How have you guys managed to not let any sort of business disagreement reach the dinner table or the Thanksgiving table?
Because you guys wouldn't be brothers if you didn't get into an argument.
I thought I was getting away from a question like that. My brother and I are very different, which is a huge benefit when you're partners in business, because of business. I think our business has grown the way it has and is much stronger because we're very different. Because I have yet to meet one person that has all the skill sets that are needed and the proper personality and emotional intelligence to be able to cover all the needs within a business to be successful. My brother is much more direct, much more demanding, and is very, very strong on the manufacturing side. And that skill set, really helps keep our companies, keep people responsible and accountable. Where my skill sets are much more relationship building, and I'm more on the soft side. So, when it comes to being a manager, I'm really a poor manager because I'm not great at keeping people, holding them accountable and setting, we talked about the KPIs and that, I get bored with that stuff. I really do. Where, my brother's very focused on that. So those two skill sets coming together really helped us, have the full package. But at the same time, like your question, that leads to, that's a unique mixture when it comes to working together on a problem or a direction or making a decision. And the one big thing that was always a benefit for us was, my brother and I, we always did a lot of things together. We had a family farm, and there were things we had to do. We weren't really best friends, in life, but we were always brothers, and you knew each other well. You knew the strengths, you knew the weaknesses. And when we came together in our businesses, we knew that, hey, you've got your strengths, I've got my strengths, but we're equals, in the business. And it's the blending of those strengths that's going to make us better. And as 50-50 partners, we always had the clear understanding that at the end of the day, we need to decide. We're not going to run away from a disagreement. We're going to sit down and we're going to hash it out. And one of us is going to have to say, yeah, okay, we're going to go that way. And having that clear understanding that that's the way it has to be, we've never run into an issue that we didn't quickly resolve without it causing, lingering tensions between us. Now, with that said, as our company grew, it becomes a little more convenient to be able to avoid some of those discussions and issues because, you've got a lot of things that you're responsible for. I have a lot of things I'm responsible for, and that just kind of makes you a little bit busier where you don't maybe talk as much and deal with some of those problems like you should. For many, many years, our offices were side by side, and you never picked up the phone. You just yelled, and it would bounce off the wall, go out your door, bounce off the wall, and go into his door. And we'd be yelling all day long, back and forth, deciding things. There, the people back then, they used to laugh about it, because it was a daily thing. But I think the keys to it, number one, your brother or sister, and if assuming you trust them, which my brother and I have unwavering trust in each other, which is a huge benefit, because at the end of the day, people are a terrible judge of character. And at least you should know your sibling's character.
You see it every day.
Yes.
You see it every day.
Yeah. So you should know that one. So whether you can trust it, or where the weakness is, and you can deal with it. But at the end of the day, you have to have that commitment that we're equals in this, and we have to come to a decision. That's what's best for a company, and that's what's best for us. And we're going to be committed to come to an agreement, and then we're going to do it.
Your dad and mom still living?
Yes.
Have you ever sat down and thanked them?
for many things, so I'm not sure.
But I mean, the fact that you guys have different skill sets.
Oh, no, I never did that.
I mean, that's interesting you say that, because you as a father also know that your parenting style helps, pull that together. So I guess tomorrow you'll be making a
Yeah.
phone call.
Done. Put that on my to-do list.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Yeah.
bringing that up.
Yeah, okay. AJ, does that answer your question?
It does. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. We have anybody else?
Yeah, I have one question real quick.
Sean Davis.
Yeah,
All right.
Sean, go ahead.
All right, so my question was, so throughout your 24 or however many years you've been in
It
business.
sounds like you're in a tunnel.
Oh, all right. Can you hear me now?
Not quite, but go ahead. That's related to us.
All right, so I guess my question would be, what was one of, not necessarily biggest failures, but biggest struggles as you were putting your company together and building Brilex?
Biggest failure or struggle putting your company together?
Well, the biggest failure that we ever had was an acquisition. We had come across what we thought was a good acquisition target, a company that was in the infrastructure business, bridges to be specific. And this company was having a tough time. It was brought to us by an accountant and laid out the story that the whole problem was cash flow, needed cash injection. And it was one of our first acquisitions, and we learned a lot. It was very costly lesson. It taught us that you really have to do your due diligence when you look at acquisitions. The specific issue that we really ran into this one was there was a lot of material in the building when we walked through it. And, when you see hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of steel beams on the floor, it's hard to tell the difference between $300,000 or $600,000 worth of them when the whole building's full of beams. Well, we didn't count the beams. So after we did the acquisition and we had a project that needed $360,000 worth of beams, I'll never forget that number. We found out that they were still sitting at the steel mill, that they weren't in the building. So we come to find out that, not only are they sitting at the steel mill, but they haven't been paid for. So I'd say our biggest, failure was not doing our due diligence, to the level that you really need to do it when you're looking at an acquisition. At the same time, it was the first time we ever acquired a company and kept the previous owner of that company as the manager. And we come to find out there were a lot of reasons why that company was failing, and that, we should have never kept that person involved. And at that point, it was too late to really fix it. So we tailed it out, and to keep our reputation what it is, we paid all the suppliers. We helped some of the employees find jobs at some other places, and we brought some of the employees over to Brilex and just wound it down. But that certainly was what I would say was our biggest failure.
A lesson learned.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're tough, Sean. What else we got? Anybody else from the crowd? I guess that's it. Well, listen, Alex, I'll tell you a couple things here. It's really been a pleasure for me getting to know your son. So that's a compliment to you as a dad.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
It's really been a pleasure getting to finally meet you and understand how you guys pulled this together, because I think it's really, really remarkable, to live in the Mahoning Valley and see the drive and ambition that you guys have had over the years and the success. And we certainly wish you much more success in the future. And as you both you and Brian get your kids involved in it, I think, from what the example I see is chip off the old block, and that's a great thing. So I want to thank you for taking the time tonight and doing this. I think it's pretty admirable what you've done, and appreciate you sharing with us the path of an entrepreneur. So thanks again, everybody, for attending. Certainly appreciate your time. The video will be on YouTube, but Alex, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good night.